بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم، والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين محمد بن عبد الله وآل بيته وصحبه أجمعين. إخواني وأخواتي من التربويين والمختصين ومدراء المدارس والمعلمين، السادة الحضور المشاركين في سلسلة 90 دقيقة من المعرفة التربوية في حلقتها الثانية حول موضوع مناهج الطلبة لعام 2030. يأتي تنفيذ وتنظيم هذه السلسلة ليعكس التعاون المشترك والمستمر بين المركز الإقليمي للتخطيط التربوي والمؤسسات التربوية والتعليمية ممثلة بكلية الإمارات للتطوير التربوي في إطار شراكة استراتيجية نسعى من خلالها لتقديم الدعم والمساندة للأنظمة التعليمية والعاملين فيها في وطننا العربي من خلال تبادل الخبرات والاطلاع على أفضل الممارسات وتبني السياسات التعليمية الداعمة لتطوير أوطاننا. تنفذ هذه السلسلة في فترة لا زال العالم والأنظمة التعليمية يعاني من تأثير جائحة كوفيد-19 ويسعى جاهداً للتكيف معها والتعافي، وتم اختيار موضوع الندوة ليتوائم مع مخرجات مشاريع البحث في المركز الإقليمي للتخطيط التربوي ومع آخر المستجدات العالمية وأولويات التعليم، وللاستعداد لفترة ما بعد الجائحة من خلال تطوير السياسات ونماذج العمل على المستوى الاستراتيجي والتشغيلي والمؤسسات التعليمية والمدارس. السادة الحضور، يجب علينا دائما كعاملين ومتخصصين في مجال التربية والتعليم أن نتساءل دائما ماذا يجب علينا أن نفعل ونغير حتى نستطيع إعداد الأجيال القادمة من الطلبة لكي تكون مستعدة للتعامل مع متغيرات المستقبل. فالطالب الذي سوف يدخل المدرسة السنة القادمة سوف يتخرج تقريباً في عام 2038 ويستمر في عمله حتى عام 2080 أو ما بعده، وخلال هذه الفترة فإننا لا يمكن لنا التنبؤ بما سوف تكون عليه التغيرات المستقبلية في العالم وفي احتياجات سوق العمل من القوى العاملة والمهارات المطلوب تمليكها للخريجين، حيث أنها تتغير وستستمر في التغيير مع معدل التقدم التكنولوجي وتغير صورة العالم ما بعد كوفيد-19. ومن هنا تأتي الحاجة إلى التركيز على التدريس وتمليك الخريجين مهارات المستقبل، وذلك عن طريق تغيير طريقة التدريس وما نقوم بتدريسه من مواد ومحتوى هذه المواد بحيث تتوائم مع متطلبات مستقبل العمل، والتركيز على المهارات الداعمة للخريجين للتعامل مع المتغيرات مثل حل المشكلات والتفكير الإبداعي والعمل التعاوني والمهارات الرقمية. ومن أجل ذلك فنحن بحاجة إلى إعادة تعريف التعليم الأساسي لمواكبة تطور المهارات المطلوبة وتعزيز قدرات الطلبة وتوجيههم نحو اكتساب المعرفة وتهيئتهم للتعلم والتكيف مع الظروف المحيطة حتى نستطيع إعداد جميع الطلبة لامتلاك المهارات المطلوبة التي تؤهلهم بشكل كافي للتعامل مع المستقبل ومتغيراته. السادة الحضور، أن تطوير المناهج أصبحت ضرورية حياتية في عصر تفجر المعرفة والتطور العلمي والتكنولوجي المتسارع، وذلك لتحقيق الرؤى المستقبلية لأوطاننا في الانتقال لاقتصاد المعرفة وتأهيل الطاقات الشابة للمستقبل. ومن البديهيات أن تستجيب الأنظمة التعليمية لهذه الرؤى وتتأثر وينعكس ذلك على التعليم ومقوماته المختلفة، ومما لا ريب فيه أن المناهج الدراسية تعد من أهم تلك المقومات وأبرزها. في هذه الجلسة التي تمتد ل90 دقيقة سوف يتم مشاركتكم بتصور حول المكونات الرئيسية للمناهج الدراسية للطلبة في عام 2030، وتطرح الآراء وتتبادل الخبرات من خلال الخبراء المشاركين في الجلسة، وسوف تكون لآرائكم وخبراتكم كل التقدير، لذا نرجو منكم عرضها في قائمة الأسئلة والأجوبة لنتشارك بها. وفي نهاية كلمتي أشكر جميع الشركاء الاستراتيجيين للمركز في تنفيذ هذه الجلسة، وأشكركم على مشاركتكم وتفاعلكم، وأترك الفرصة للدكتور محمد فتيحة للبدء في هذه الجلسة، فليتفضل مشكورا.
Thank you, Your Excellence, Ms. Mahra. It's an honor for me to be part of the Regional Center Educational Planning 90 Minutes of Knowledge series as a moderator. Good evening, colleagues. Assalamu alaikum, all, wherever you are. It's our great pleasure to welcome you in our second activity of the 90 Minutes Knowledge series which will highlight the school curriculum in 2030. Thank you, Ms. Mahara, for your introductory speech. It's really highlighting the main important points that will affect our future and our generation in the coming years. COVID-19, with the impact that we are having now, I know that majority of us, we don't like the positive word, but there is a positive impact from COVID-19 on us in general. It accelerates our teaching and learning opportunities. It gives us a chance to think more in depth on the future about our opportunities and our chances. Before starting our session, kindly be informed of the following guidelines. During the session, you can write your comments on the chat box, and we will be happy to reflect on those concerns. And later on, if there is a Q&A, our speakers will be happy to answer all these Q&A accordingly. You can use the Q&A option also to ask any question related to the topic, and the presenter will answer them accordingly. Translation will be available soon as promised. إن شاء الله الترجمة راح تكون متوفرة قريبا للغة العربية أو اللغات المتوفرة. Wishing you all a great learning journey with us in those 90 minutes. To give you a brief idea about our session today, we will be having a main presentation by Dr. Qasim Mashrnaq, who will be introducing in a minute, about the key components of curriculum for students in 2030. Followed by 3 guest speakers who will enrich our session, comment and reflect on the main paper. Then we will open it for answering for Q&A, and then we will have 10 minutes for the attendees if they have any specific question. Allow me to start my introductory speech also before Dr. Qasim's session with this quote for Albert Einstein. He mentioned education is not the learning of facts, but it's a training of mind to think. And like this is several years ago, and it's really a great quote that we have to follow and prepare our generation to think in the future in different approach. Another quote that I got from the founder and then the executive chairman, World Economic Forum: we stand on the brink of technological revolution that will fundamentally alter the way we live, work, and relate to one another. It's a scale, scope, and complexity that transformation will be unlike anything humankind has expected before. And I believe that the pandemic accelerates even this transformation more and more. New technologies like artificial intelligence, 3D printing, robotics are emerging with the potential for having a transformative impact on the industry, the economy, and society as a whole. What is the impact on the schools, educators, students? How this will impact the school curriculum? How do we refine career readiness, future skills, which Dr. Qasim will highlight those graduate attributes, and better prepare students for an uncertain future? What kind of knowledge, skills, attributes, and values are necessary to understand, engage with the shape and changing world towards a better future in 2030 and more? Transformation of our curriculum, how it will be done? What is the impact on our students again? How can policies and practices be transformed effectively to support young people, learners, and well-being in the context of changing societies and economic? Learners need to develop a sense of themselves in the world, to adapt to complexity and uncertainty, and to be able to help shape a better future. Every learner needs to be equipped with certain transformative competencies, again, which Dr. Qasim will highlight part of those competencies. Curriculum aims, I believe, should be also changed, should be inclusive. We need to work on the hidden curriculum, in the formal curriculums, other type of curriculums to be included, multi-layered, dynamic, holistic, and multi-directional to benefit our generation in a right and functional and effective way. I think all these comments and questions and concerns are part of our thinking as an educator, as an stakeholders in the education institution. Our main presentation will be about the key component of curriculum for students in 2030, presented by Dr. Qasim Al-Shunnaq. To highlight this, the report will focus on identifying the key components of curriculum for students in 2030. Education system must be dynamic, as I said, flexible, modifiable. We can modify it in order to adapt to the changes demand of the learner context and also the world around our students and our learner. This report inspects the knowledge, skills, attitudes, characteristics, and values that are recommended in order to foster a high-quality curriculum, which will really support future students to thrive and positively impact the world. The topic will cover the following main points that will be highlighted by Dr. Qasim in his presentation: type of basic curriculum design, curriculum analysis cases, focuses, 21st century skills, assessments, integration, future curriculum trends, future curriculum knowledge, future skills, attitudes and values of 2030, the role of technology, which I'm sure will be a huge impact on our curriculum and in the whole educational system. Dr. Qasim Al-Shunnaq completed his PhD in 1998 from Michigan State University, USA. His dissertation focused on how teachers' characteristics and teachers' education program feature influence their knowledge, beliefs, and teaching performance. In 1992, he obtained his MA in Methods of Teaching Science at the University of Jordan and earned his BSc in Chemistry from Yarmouk University. Dr. Shunnaq joined the ECAE in August 2019 as an Associate Professor of Science Education. Before joining ECAE, he worked as an Associate Professor of Science Education at the College of Education, United Arab Emirates University. In addition, he worked second to Abu Dhabi Department of Education and Knowledge, ADEC, from January 2017 to August 2019. Previously, he worked as an Associate Professor of Science Education at the College of Education, University of Jordan, and Assistant Dean of Student Affairs. His research interests include national and international assessment, e-learning in science, environmental education, and education for sustainable development. During his career, he was teaching courses in science education and curriculum and instruction for undergraduate and postgraduate students, supervise graduate students, and conduct research. He was a principal researcher for funded research projects. I'm sure like many of those research, Dr. Qasim, he was in charge on those as principal investigator or as a co-investigator. Dr. Shunnaq has published an international and national peer-reviewed research journal and has co-authored and contributed to several books and other publications. If I want to speak about Dr. Shunnaq, maybe I will spend the 90 minutes talking about his scholarly activities and his great achievement in the education sector. Dr. Shunnaq, you will be having 20 minutes. Allow me to remind you 2 minutes before you finish your, I'll try to be generous, but I'll try to be also committed to our schedule. The mic is yours, Dr. Qasim. Please share your presentation and start.
Okay, thank you so much, Dr. Muhammad. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim, wa salatu wa salam ala afdal khalq wal mursaleen, Sayyidina Muhammad. First of all, I would like to thank Her Excellency Ms. Mahra Al-Mtawi, the chair of the Regional Center for Educational Planning, UNESCO, for her effort and her team in organizing this activity, in addition to other activities. And really, it is maybe more than 1 year project by which we produce 4 working papers that I'm gonna introduce one of them on this case. Also, I would like to thank our distinguished moderator for his thoughtful introduction to me, and really I appreciate that. In addition, I would like to thank our discussants, Professor Jeff, Dr. Joe, and Dr. Borek, who is co-authoring me this paper too. Allow me to share my presentation first, then I will start my presentation. Can you see my slideshow now? Confirmation. Can you see it?
Yes, Dr.
Yes,
Qasim, yes, clear.
Okay, thank you. So the title of our presentation is Key Components of Curriculum for Students in 2030. This working paper was co-authored with my colleagues Tursey, Aida Santos, Patricia Fidalgo, and Farouk Al-Maghdadi, and it was published by RECIP in December 2020. And the full paper is there, and they can share it with you later on, the full paper. In today's presentation, I'm going to cover the main topics that focus on types of basic curriculum analysis cases, the focus, the 21st century skills, the assessment, the integration, the future curriculum trends, future curriculum knowledge, future skills, attitudes and values for 2030, the role of technology, as our moderator highlights the importance of the role of technology in implementing future curriculum, especially before, during, and after COVID-19 pandemic. Technology integration into schools, future curriculum and technology integration, innovative teaching and learning, assessment strategies of future curriculum. Then we will end up with a conclusion, recommendations, and sample of references. As you know, this is based on a literature review. There are like three main basic type of curriculums. One of them is subject-centered, and the emphasis will be on the content. This is the most important, and it is classified as a traditional approach in curriculum reform and design. The other approach is learner-centered approach. The emphasis will be on engaging our students, learners, as an active participants in the learning context, and they are able to construct their own knowledge and understanding. And also the main feature of this type of curriculum, the choices and flexibility are vital elements in designing this type of curriculum. The third type, which is a problem-centered curriculum, and the focus will be the content is organized around specific problems, and learners, they interact with these problems, and through this interaction, they will be able to provide authentic reasons for learning, and they will be motivated, and the engagement might be to the maximum level on this case. In our working paper, in order to proceed and propose our new future curriculum, we analyze curriculum cases in 4 countries: Finland, Singapore, England, and China. And in Finland, the most feature of this curriculum, it was a student-centered curriculum with a focus on students' experiences and emotions as well as learning. So this is the most important of the Finland curriculum, the new reform era in Finland right now. And also there is emphasis in student-centered and flexible pathways of studies. In Singapore, the focus is in holistic learning and the promotion of values, as well as maintaining high standards of learning. So schools can direct the development of the curriculum. They have the authority, they have the input to develop the curriculum in order to proceed on a student's learning. In England, really the focus in the development of knowledge. So they went back to focus more on the literacy and numeracy issues, and this is the main focus of the England curriculum nowadays in order to support the development of educated citizens. And we will see will come like the numeracy and literacy will come as a main component across most main school subjects. In China, really, the position curriculum and education has a mean of developing their citizens to enhance their lives. So they are looking now to improve the students' life, the citizens' lives. And one way to do that, they have significant transaction to better emphasis holistic education, and instead of focusing on the content and drill and practice of assessment practices. In addition, learners in the Finland curriculum, they are active, as you see, because it is a student-centered approach in designing the curriculum, and learning is inseparable part from individuals' growth. So individual or learner growth and curriculum is aligned together. In Singapore, the new trend is teach less, learn more. Not like add more content. No, they need to reduce the content and to focus more about the quality and in-depth of content by which they can integrate 21st century skills. Learner for life, these are like main features of this curriculum. In England, as we said, they go back again to the knowledge-based curriculum with minor emphasis on the 21st century skills. However, they do promote the development of pupils' knowledge, understanding, and skills as part of a wider school curriculum. In China, they went back to the expansion of focus from knowledge acquisition to the incorporation of metacognitive skills, problem solving, and cooperative learning. So this is the new trends, the new approaches that we would love to see on today's curriculum or future curriculum. As a curriculum case analysis, we find like Singapore and Finland, they have reduced emphasis on examination, and this is the most important. In order to proceed in the 2030 curriculum components, you need to reduce the level of like examination, the centralized assessments, and the standardized assessment in this case. China appears to be moving in that direction, and they are like minimizing the level of examination. England, they went back, okay, instead of like reduce the examination, they increased the examination, and they have like highest stake examination at age 7, 11, and 16. And some countries, maybe on the GCC, they followed the British curriculum reform, which we need to think about it. Integration of subjects in a common theme in England and Finland, but at clearly different levels of application. So the application of the common theme might differ between Finland and England. Finland have placed greater emphasis on breaking down the barriers between subjects. So they have deploying the idea of multidisciplinary models like STEAM or STEM idea as interdisciplinary component to design the curriculum. England also have taken a much more measured approach by encouraging the development of literacy and numeracy. And we mentioned that across all subjects, not just on math or reading literacy, but in science and social studies and other schools, main core school subjects, the emphasis will also be on numeracy and literacy. So the future curriculum trends, we are focused on 5 main components: interest-driven and personalization, lifelong learning, digital delivery, infusion of innovative pedagogies, integration of skills and content areas. And the future of curriculum knowledge, I'm not going to go in all of these details, but according to the Learning Framework 2030 of OECD in 2019, they highlight the importance of disciplinary knowledge. And this is the core subject knowledge, which is still necessary, but it shouldn't be the main focus on this case. It should be integrated with other types of knowledge, and it should be the base of the other types of knowledge, like interdisciplinary knowledge. And knowledge has been this type of knowledge, like if we have a STEM education, or like combine the 4 subjects, science, technology, engineering, and math together. Nowadays, we have the STEAM. We add art to this component, and nowadays we are talking about a stream. We added the literacy, and it should be part of this. And I think in the GCC, and particularly in UAE, they are like deploying some projects of curriculum reform in this direction. Epistemic knowledge about disciplines and uses of knowledge. How to use knowledge, such as knowing how to think, and as a mathematician, as a scientist, as a historian. So we need to simulate how scientists think and the procedures by which they follow this kind of investigation and the inquiry-based approach on this case. A procedural knowledge of how. And this should be implicit learning, which students may not be aware of, but can be even like response or application of understanding. Excuse me. Okay, I will continue. So please mute yourself.
أنا سامع الصوت هلا من عندهم. ألو. يلا بس بدك تدخلني مترجم انت. اوكي يلا.
Okay. He is then translator. Please give him access and I will continue, and please mute him. If there is duplicate, there will be an easy, difficult presentation. The future skills, as you can see from figure 1, 2030 skills, the focus will be in 3 main types of skills: cognitive and metacognitive skills. And there are a lot of details within each type of skills: the practical and physical skills, social and emotional skills. And like the learning from work, this is from OECD 2019, has predicted a set of skills, and these skills should be part of the curriculum of 2030. The attitudes and values for 2030. So skills, attitude, and values are key elements of the OECD Learning Compass 2030. And OECD, they conducted many training courses. They conducted many initiatives in order to develop curriculum across the world, different countries and nations, in order to promote this framework. Values and attitudes are defined and discussed differently, and maybe we'll end up with more than 100 different definitions of values and attitudes, but as a framework, the focus will be on include characters of morality, ethics, attributes, and social and emotional skills. The attitude and values, the most important is to focus on the core values and should be part of the 2030 curriculums that include dignity, respect, equality, justice, responsibility, global mindless, cultural diversity, freedom, tolerance, and democracy. And also, again, this is according to the OECD curriculum attitudes framework. The role of technology in implementing a future curriculum. As our moderator and Her Excellency Ms. Mohra Al-Mtawi highlighted that at the introduction, nowadays technology becomes part of our curriculum, and the necessity of integrating technology becomes more important nowadays and the days after the COVID-19 pandemic. And according to the OECD, 2019, schools play a vital role in preparing students for the 21st century workplace. So the focus, the mission of the OECD is to prepare students for the 21st century workplace, especially for the Europe OECD countries and other countries. They are follow the same procedure. Technology will play a dual role in the development of the future curriculum, as well as it will be central competence that must be included in the curricula and a central to delivering the curriculum. So technology will be part of developing the curriculum by which we are going to develop the curriculum, and also it will include competences by which we are going to deliver the curriculum. And nowadays, I think teachers, students, parents, they were involved on this process. The role of technology in the implementation of future curriculum implies the need for support system. So the instructors, they need this kind of support according to the United Nations 2020 report. And this kind of support should be sustainable and continuous in order to guarantee the quality of curriculum delivery. Effective generalized integration technology into education is yet to be accomplished. We are not okay in advanced level on this area, but we need to work hard into integrated technology into our curriculum, as well as empower our teachers and students and communities by technology competences at the same time. Technology integration into schools. Technology can help provide educational opportunities. So the most important, we need to offer equally timely, equally effective, and equally integrated manner with substantial equivalent ease of use. So according to Stanford Research Institute International, this is a very rich resource. I recommend all of you to take a look, and it's also listed in the sample of the references. Integrating education technology into the classroom requires a shift from teacher-centered approach to student-centered approach, according to the Finland and Singapore curriculum reform nowadays. So we need to adapt this kind of approach in our teaching and learning and assessment practices. Also, we'll continue in technology integration into schools. The role of technology in the implementation of future curriculum implies the need of a support system. So the support system within the school, the infrastructures, the teacher competences, the students' competences in technology, these are a must according to the United Nations report. The future curriculum will be competence-based curriculum in this case, and have a flexible nature and a short lifespan. So we have update competences in technology in daily basis sometimes. So what our students or teachers know before 10 years from now, okay, it will not be valid for tomorrow's schools or workplace or for future curriculum. So we need to update this kind of knowledge. We need to make alignment between traditional subjects and learning areas with the competences. So we have two approaches to do that. Maybe align with the traditional subjects like with math, science, languages, and so on, or we can redesign our curriculum based on these competences. Either approaches are acceptable, but we need to make this kind of alignment. Technology skills are essential to living in technology society or digital society or digital generation nowadays. So we need to focus more on this issue. According to the Marple et al. Framework, like we have what we call constituent elements of this kind of competences, like information, data, technology, knowledge, skills, values, attitudes. These will interact, learners will interact with all of these elements of knowledge, of information, of technology, in order to produce what within a specific context, within a certain context, in order to produce what we call macro stable competences like lifelong learning, self-agency, resources, interacting with others, like communication, collaboration, teamwork, group work.
2 minutes left, Dr. Qasim.
Huh?
2 minutes left.
Wow. So, okay. So I will skip some of these issues about innovative teaching and learning models. I will go direct to this model. It should be inquiry-based learning that focus on other types of teaching and learning models like concept development teaching, project-based learning, brain-targeted teaching, problem-based learning, cooperative learning, and independent learning. The assessment, as I said, should be shifted from on like paper and pencil test and standardized test to different types of assessment, like assessment for learning and assessment with learning, and summative assessment should be focused on the performance and authentic assessments. So assessment that endeavors to cover the scope and depth of official curriculum can have a reinforcing and even integrating effect in curriculum teaching and learning. I will go direct to the recommendation just to give very quick, I need just a couple minutes to that, cover that, like very fast messages and quick messages. We need to ensure assessment are viewed as means to inform and support teaching and learning. So this is the main purpose of the assessment, should focus on that. The assessment in general and summative assessment should focus and go beyond the quizzes and the exams. We need to develop knowledge and skills in tandem throughout an effective curriculum, provide the students with opportunities to combine knowledge and skills from different subjects. Interdisciplinary integration in the curriculum is a must. Engage key stakeholders, including the teachers, in the curriculum development reform. Ensure the curriculum is viewed as continuously evolving process that consider input from stakeholders, including industry researchers, educators, teachers, to identify long-term trends, plan meaningful and innovative pedagogical approaches to engage students in the process of learning and to promote their learning. Invest in capacity building of teachers. So BDs is essential in this case with the necessary competences and skills needed. Promote the integration of skills, values, and attitudes in the curriculum to allow students to develop both key skills and knowledge of content. Deploy innovative teaching and learning assessments. The other 5 recommendations related with the technology integration in school curriculums and school contexts in order to develop the curriculum as well as to deliver the curriculum. And finally, these are samples of references, might be helpful for you. All list of references is in the original paper, and you can contact the Regional Center for Educational Planning in order to have a copy from this working paper as well as from the brief policy paper. Thank you so much for your listening and attending. And I'm open the floor for questions and answers, and I'll get back to you, Dr. Muhammad. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Qasim. It's really a great perspective and informative presentation that you share with us, and totally agree with you. We need to do to prepare our teachers to be competent to deal with those new approaches that we are following in the education system. As an education system, we are affected with the changes that happening all over the world, in the economic, on general, in the society-related things, even in the health-related issues. So it's impacting us as educationists, and we should be ready and prepare for those future. I agree with you. We are having a lot of questions for you. I have myself some of the questions, but I'll keep it after hearing from our guest speaker. We will hear their reflections on this presentation. And our first guest speaker is Dr. Geoff Masters. Dr. Geoff Masters is the Executive Officer and the member of the board of the Australian Council for Educational Research, positions he has held since 1998. Dr. Masters has conducted a number of reviews of governments, including a review of examination procedure in the New South Wales higher school certificate, an investigation of options for the introduction of an Australian certificate of education, a national review of options for reporting and comparing school performance, reviews of strategy for improving literacy and numeracy learning in government schools in Queensland and the North Territory, a review of senior secondary assessment and tertiary entrance procedures in Queensland, and a review of a K-12 school curriculum for the government in New South Wales. Dr. Masters worked with the Western Australian Department of Education to develop a principal performance improvement tool. He is currently undertaking a study of the learning system of 5 high-performance performing school systems internationally for the U.S. National Center of Education and the Economy. His contribution to the education have been recognized through the award of the Australian College of Education Medal in 2009, and his appointment as an officer of the Order of Australia in 2014. Dr. Mathers, we are very eager to hear your perspective about the key component of curriculum for students in 2030. Please go ahead.
Thank you very much for that introduction, and I'm very pleased to be here. Thank you for the opportunity to take part in this meeting. So thank you to you, Mohammed, and thank you to the organisers of the meeting. Let me begin by saying I really like this working paper. I've read it carefully. I've read it several times, actually, and reflected on it. And I think it does provide a roadmap to the future in the area of curriculum. One of the reasons that I like it so much is because it's very consistent with observations that I'm making myself. You mentioned that I'm involved in a study with the National Centre on Education and the Economy in Washington. And what we are doing is looking at the curriculum and other aspects of the school systems in 5 high-performing jurisdictions. And the high-performing jurisdictions, I'm hoping you can see this, the high-performing jurisdictions are British Columbia, Estonia, Finland, so that's common to Dr. Hasim's study, Hong Kong, and South Korea. And I thought what might be interesting is just to share with you some of the observations that we are making, and you'll be able to see for yourself the links and the way in which the observations we are making support the conclusions of this working paper. So one of the things we're observing in these 5 school systems is that they are continuing to structure their curriculum around disciplines, around subjects. They've thought about whether they should organise the curriculum in a different way, but at this point they're continuing in a fairly traditional way to organise their curriculum around disciplines. One of the things they've all been focused on over time is reducing the amount of content. Many of them have recognised that there's just too much in the curriculum to be covered. There's a lot of factual and procedural content. It's often increased over time. And what they're doing instead is trying to focus on the things that really matter in these subjects, the core concepts, the important principles, the important methods of the subject, and to prioritise those, and of course thinking within those subjects. And looking at students' abilities to use that information, to transfer it to new situations, to apply it to practical problems. And all of this is leading them to think about the curriculum not just as a checklist of objectives or outcomes for each year of school, but to think about the curriculum as ongoing progress, development of students' deep understandings within subjects. They're focusing, as we've heard, on whole person development. They're thinking about the kinds of outcomes that young people will need for the future, what kind of society they want to develop, what kind of workforce they think they'll need, what kinds of people they want to develop. So that leads them to think about attitudes and values. And of course, they're all prioritising general competencies, often basic skills like literacy and numeracy, critical and creative thinking, ICT literacy, personal skills, like things like self-regulation, self-management, social skills, the ability to collaborate, interpersonal skills, and so on. And most of them are talking about learning that occurs outside traditional classrooms, experiential learning that takes place in the classroom, certainly, but also outside classrooms. And to develop deep understandings, there's a focus in all these systems on the application of learning to real life problems and sometimes to projects as well. Another priority is to develop their curriculum in a way that is inclusive of all students. In many of these systems, that has not always been the case. Students have been streamed, some have moved into lower streams, higher streams, so they've been tracked in various ways. The whole curriculum has not been accessible to every student. And so if one looks at what they've been doing over recent years, they've been putting an end to tracking and trying to develop a common approach, a comprehensive approach to the curriculum for all students. And part of that is removing from their arrangements gateways that have existed that have prevented some students from moving on. So many of these systems have had points of selection where only some students can move on to the next phase of the curriculum, and they've slowly been removing those gateways so that all students have access to the full school curriculum throughout the years of school. One can also see an emphasis on developing more integrated approaches to learning, not just having subject knowledge sitting over to one side and general capabilities or competencies or skills sitting on the other side, but bringing them together and thinking about how knowledge and skills can be developed together along with attributes of the kind that I've been describing. How can those be developed in an integrated way so that students develop skills at the same time as they're developing theoretical knowledge and understandings. Part of the solution there is to promote more interdisciplinary or cross-disciplinary ways of learning. And so projects that bring together different subjects are being used in quite a number of these jurisdictions. And they're also thinking about the academic vocational divide that exists in the final years of school, in the upper secondary school. Some of these jurisdictions, these school systems, have a very strong divide at that point, where students either go down an academic track or a vocational track. But increasingly what they're looking at is how those things can be better integrated. Our students who are pursuing an academic track can have access to more vocationally relevant learning, and similarly, the way that students who are pursuing a vocational track can also have a focus on developing knowledge, understanding theory, and not just developing skills on a checklist, for example. Decentralizing the curriculum has been a priority in these 5 school systems, and that has meant usually developing the curriculum as a broad framework. So not a curriculum that specifies in great detail the outcomes that students are expected to develop, but a broad framework within which schools then have the freedom to develop local curricula that are more responsive to local needs, to the needs of students in local contexts. And then finally, we can see in all these systems that there's a move to make schooling more personalised. Often these school systems will talk about a student-centred curriculum, and that will often mean giving students more control over their own learning, giving them more choice in what they learn, more agency, if you like, and also providing more flexibility over when learning occurs and where learning occurs, so that it's not just occurring within the confines of the classroom, which of course has been an issue over the last year or so with COVID. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Dr. Masters. On time. So great. Thank you for the great reflection. I totally agree with you. Like those key components: inclusivity, integration, decentralization. Again, it's one of the main issues that we have to develop in our areas here. It's an important, because by the end we need it to be more personalized and more centered, student-centered approach. Thanks a lot, dear Dr. Master, and we will come to you back after that, inshallah, for some of those questions from my side and from the attendees. Our second speaker is Dr. Wong. Dr. Wong is an associate professor and assistant director at the Institute of Curriculum and Instruction, East China Normal University, Shanghai. He received his master and PhD degree from the University of Washington, Seattle. His research interest in multicultural education, equity, and curriculum studies, global migration, citizenship, and cultural identification, and rural Americans and school and social integration. His works appear in both English and Chinese academic journals, including race, ethnicity, education, origin, economics and geography, education and urban society, intercultural education, and global education Chinese. He is currently working on several national and professional research projects about globalized understanding curriculum and culturally responsive pedagogy for migrant children in China. He serves as the secretary in the National Commission from K to 9 curriculum revision and the assistant editor of the ECNU review of education. Dr. Tao Wong, we are very excited to hear your reflection about the key component of curriculum for students in 2030. Please go ahead. You are muted, Dr. Tao.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I really enjoy reading the report and also the presentation from Dr. Shanak and also from Dr. Masters. I think this is a really timely report, and from reading this report, I find it very informative. Get to know the different practices of the 4 countries and also the features of the current curriculum changes in the world. And I also find this report pretty interpretive, trying to show the different curriculum types and also trying to explain the curriculum trends that we are having. And I do find a lot of parallels happening between different countries, even though they are having different curriculum types or curriculum styles. And as we are talking about the future curriculum, I think that as Dr. Shanak just mentioned, the competency-based curriculum is part of the trend that we are focusing right now. And also, I think that in Dr. Masters' comment, we also see that in several countries, through his comparison research, they have a lot of parallels, have a lot of common features like curriculum around discipline, whole person development, and integrated learning experiences. So for my part, I would like to add up on Dr. Masters' comment and share a little bit about a specific country example, which is the example of China. I was part of the National Commission for Curriculum Change in China for the K-9 curriculum reform, which is going on right now. I would like to add a little bit about how actually a specific country example, how we are redesigning the curriculum in a country. So let me share the screen right now. So are you able to see the PowerPoint?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. So for the China part, that's on a rolling base, we revised the curriculum to meet the new need, and as we were talking about, to meet the future need. So, but the feature that China and some, especially those top-down administrative countries, the feature that we are having is more kind of like a systematic design and a linear implementation and more subject-based competence. So the one I'm introducing right now is the new curriculum standards of high school education that is initiated in 2014 and announced in November 2018. So this new curriculum was applied to more than 40 million high school students in China. For this, this is actually the first time China tried to incorporate the core competencies into the high school curriculum. So for this high school curriculum, there is actually less required credits to graduate, and there are more elective courses for a student to choose. So let me talk a little bit about the competency that we understand in China. So we realize there are knowledge, there are skills, but we really put a lot of focus on the characters and values. For example, that we both know that to be a good driver, that we will need the knowledge of traffic laws and road signs, skills of driving, turning, stopping. But most importantly, we think that to be a good driver, we would need the characters and values. We see a driverless car in the middle. That imagine that in the future, when man is not needed in the regular driving, we don't quite need the driving knowledge and skills. But what we really need is the driver to deal with the complicated driving incidents and conflicts. So that's the part we think that the characters and values are very important. But for China's core competency, we develop a local competency-based competency frameworks. Here you will see 3 sections of autonomous development, civic participation, and cultural foundation. I think this is the part we see in the Dr. Shanag's report. But a specific part that is different from the OECD and UNESCO is that we try to develop the core competency based on the subject. So because we think the whole framework is a bit of too complicated for the teachers to do. And so we try to develop core competency for the Chinese, core competency for the mathematics, and for the different subjects. So for example, here that for the Chinese, we would have the 4 basic competency in this subject that would be development and advancement of thought, aesthetic and appreciation and creation, language construction, application, culture inheritance, and understanding. So that is to say that and also this would correspond to Dr. Master's idea. So we try to not just talking about the competency, but also talking about the competency around the discipline. So and we focus a lot about the implementation. For the implementation part, that we put the competency into the different curriculum catalog. We would have the curriculum category of required, elective, and elective. So more importantly, like following the curriculum category, we try to put this into the curriculum content. So similar to the curriculum analysis project at the OECD and UNESCO, we try to reframe and reorganize the curriculum content around the subject-based core competency. And more importantly, we try to design the performance standards based on the subject-based core competencies. So just to try to summarize it, so the whole design in China, we try to do a systematic and a linear curriculum design. And the whole idea or the whole purpose was to focus on the competency, but we would like to have a more practical model to do that. Following the high school curriculum program, the one we are doing right now is a new K-9 national curriculum program and standards. It's supposed to be announced by the end of this year. So I'm also part of it. I think that for the whole, for my comments, as I'm talking about the case of China, I think it's we might be able to share some common ideas that if a country really want to incorporate the idea of competency in its national curriculum, there are several models. We see models in those bottom-up administrative system, but also we would see the system as more as kind of like a top-down administrative system. So I would say the one we're having in China would be a more kind of a linear and a systematic design model. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Wong, for the informative reflection. Again, it's a great idea also to hear about the core competences framework. And also, I totally agree with you, the character and the values are more important. Yeah, we have the knowledge, we have the skill, but we need also to focus on the values and the character that build really a real citizen or a real generation in the future. Thanks a lot. And again, you will be having few of those questions after the our third and last guest speaker, Dr. Barrick Tursey. Dr. Barrick Tursey is an assistant professor in the Curriculum and Instruction Division at Emirate College for Advanced Education. He has extensive experience in leading, lecturing, teaching, and tutoring mathematics education for undergraduate, postgraduate, and professional development program, as well as coordinating and providing mathematics learning support. His research interests include integrating mathematics with other subjects to enhance learning, which is something great for me. I like the word integration. It should be a must in our teaching and learning process. Application for mathematics curriculum change, and students transition from second level mathematics study to the third level mathematics study. Dr. Tursey was previously a senior lecturer in mathematics education, leading the secondary mathematics BGCE at the University of Brighton, UK. He was also a lecturer of mathematics and manager of the Mathematics Learning Center at the University of Limerick, Ireland. With that, the floor is yours, Dr. Tursey.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you to all the speakers so far. So I was working with Dr. Kazim on this particular paper, and one of the key aspects that I engaged in, which was of great interest to me, was looking at the trends amongst other countries. We focused on England, Singapore, Finland, and China as being, key leaders in curriculum development and the trends that we're seeing currently at the moment. So they were really interesting to see not only the similarities, but also the differences, especially, given the trends we can see, especially in Finland and Singapore, moving towards more holistic views of learning, 21st century skills, focus on student-centered learning particularly. And, that's in comparison to England, where they had moved in that direction earlier in the 21st century, but then they decided to reverse course somewhat. And that was quite interesting to see, quite a big leader in education traditionally. And of course, at the moment, England taking those decisions was very interesting. So one, I just want to share a particular image. So hopefully, okay, doesn't seem to be coming up quite, but we have this saying, which, when I was looking at the different systems and the different changes and the different recommendations that we have in our paper, we have this saying, you shouldn't let the assessment tail wag the curriculum dog. So that might be, quite a complex thing to think about, but basically, a lot of the time assessment dictates what we actually teach and how we teach. And, that shouldn't be the case. It should be the case that curriculum should dictate what we teach and how we teach, and then what we assess. And I think that's something we need to be really aware of and really cognizant of anytime we want to make changes and make these adjustments where we bring in these 21st century skills, where we look at integrating different subjects like mathematics and science and other STEM subjects and beyond. We have to really be cognizant that assessment plays such an important role, because we know it's human nature. Students, teachers, when they're teaching something, they always think, oh, how is this going to be assessed? And what is going to be assessed? And we have to really think, all right, in order for us to make significant change and meaningful change, and change that actually will take place in our classrooms, we have to think assessment plays an extremely important role, because, as I said, it is human nature for teachers and students to really think, okay, this is what I have to learn, but how will I be assessed? And usually there's an adaptation according to that. So if we are to encourage metacognition, critical thinking, and all these other 21st century skills that we want to incorporate into our curriculum, we really need to think about the ways in which we effectively assess those particular areas and incorporate them into our assessments. And that's quite a complex undertaking, especially given that, you know, we've had such a tradition of examinations, you know, in the UAE and in other countries as well, whereby that's what teachers and students are used to, and that's the traditional approach, and that's how systems are typically set up. But in order to bring in critical thinking, metacognition, problem solving in an effective manner, we have to think, how do we incorporate that effectively into how we assess? And it's so important to consider different modes of assessment and how they will be incorporated into our current structures and systems. And that's something that we always have to remember. So the assessment tail should not wag the curriculum dog, but we know in reality that assessment has such an impact on curriculum, i.e. what we teach and how we teach. So that's something really important. And also we have to remember that with assessment, it has to be valid and reliable. So it has to assess what we intended to assess. So say, for instance, in mathematics, my subject, problem solving is such a key area to assess. And often we do that through word problems. But sometimes that creates a barrier whereby, oh, if we want to effectively assess problem solving, well, we give them word problems, but what if, you know, interpreting and understanding the word problem becomes an issue? What if it's a large paragraph of a word problem? Are you really assessing their mathematics knowledge or their knowledge of language? And so this idea of being valid and reliable is important. Fairness and flexibility as well would be two other components that are really important in the design of assessments. So as I was looking at different countries and how they're trying to adapt and improve their approaches, and I know our last two speakers have alluded to that as well, we really need to think, okay, these assessments, how are we designing them and how are we incorporating them? The other thing I wanted to talk about, as was said in the introduction, I'm really interested in integrating subjects, particularly STEM subjects, you know, mathematics and science. And I've done a lot of research on that where I've tried to incorporate that in schools. And again, anytime you try to make a change, there's always going to be challenges and barriers. And what I found when integrating two subjects, i.e. mathematics and science, it's quite a challenge. You have to come up with ways in which you can effectively bring two different subjects together. And that can be a lot more of a challenge than you think. There's not that many curricular materials, i.e. lesson plans or tasks that teachers can draw upon. And teachers are already very overworked and don't necessarily have time to come up with things like that themselves. Then you look at timetables. Can you incorporate it into already overloaded timetables? And then thinking about other things like, okay, who's going to teach these integrated lessons? You know, sometimes you might have a mathematics teacher that has a decent knowledge of science, but that's not going to be the case for every mathematics teacher. And the reverse, the science teacher, do they know all the various nuances of mathematics? So again, there's those kind of challenges that we really need to be cognizant of when we're making recommendations with regards to significant changes to how we teach and what we teach. And so, as I said, what I've really, you know, while I don't want to be taking down the mood by any in any way, we really need to be cognizant. Okay, these are important changes that we want to make for the future of our education systems, but we really need to tread carefully and think, how are we going to incorporate it in the most effective, the most valid, reliable, fair, and flexible way into our assessments? And then if we're trying to look at ways in which we can combine different disciplines, will we be able to support and prepare teachers effectively? Will we be able to incorporate it effectively into our current timetables in schools? What are the practical issues we really need to think about when going from the theoretical to the actual practice that we will be implementing in our schools? And they were the key messages I just wanted to bring to the attention and let people think about as we explore the options for a curriculum in 2030. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Tursey, for those key messages and highlights. It's an important one. I agree with you. It's a comprehensive and general perspective. We shouldn't look at it from specific angles. When we look at the curriculum, we have to look at the students, teachers, assessment, pedagogy approaches, all things together. I also will highlight another point from Dr. Shanna when he mentioned about the interdisciplinary approach, which really help us to do and to work in collaborative way as the teachers together, trying to go with the integrated approach that we are looking to. Again, agree with you, a lot of competences, mainly in the teaching area, maybe knowledge area, our teachers, they are having it, but we need to spend some training and some additional professional developments program to enhance their teaching and learning competencies. Thank you, Dr. Tursey, and thanks for our panelists for their great reflection, and thanks for Dr. Qasim Shnakh for his great paper and presentation. I'll start with you, Dr. Qasim. My first question, then I will go to the panelists. You highlight in the paper the curriculum analysis cases of Finland, Singapore, UK, and China. How we, as in the Arab world, can really benefit from those success stories and build on it?
Thank you for this great question, Dr. Muhammad. And really, it's one of the questions that come on the chat too, like why you are addressing the foreign experiences and not the Arab world experiences in developing curriculum. It was the scope of the paper, first of all, but what do we benefit from this experience? Like we highlight the most important issues by which we can promote the 2030 curriculum components in this case. In order to integrate like knowledge, skills, values, characteristics together, you need to have interdisciplinary approach in integrating curriculum, in addition to have like competences integrated within this approach. Student-centered approach is a must. And there is another question on the chat about, do you think we can implement student-centered approach in every country? Yes, we can. Okay, regardless, is it rich or poor country, we need to shift our concentration from student-centered approach, one size fits all curriculum or delivery system or whatever, okay, to have differentiated instruction, differentiated assessment, to have equal access and fair access, because there is another question in the chat. Do you think, do we have internet connectivity challenges, all of this issue? We understand all of this issue, Dr. Muhammad, but I think the most important is what is the nature of the curriculum? Curriculum development should be, as Tao mentioned in his presentation, like what is the direction? It is bottom up or top down. We benefit from the Singaporean experience in this case. They have their own module. What is it? It is bottom up, top down support. And this is what we need from policy, from stakeholders, from decision makers. We need to support curriculum development, but it should start from the bottom up, from the teachers, from inside the classroom, from the learners. They need to be involved in the process of curriculum development.
Thank you, Dr. Qasim. And I think this is also one of the questions on the chat. How is like about our role as a teacher, and maybe Dr. Master can answer this question. What is our role as a teacher? And we should play a huge role in building the curriculum, benefiting from our experience and what's happening with our students, or it should come from, again, from up and just ready-made and go with that curriculum?
Well, I think what most of us are observing is that high-performing countries are moving away from highly prescriptive curricula. They've had very centralized curricula that have spelled out in great detail exactly what teachers should teach. And they are moving away from that, as I said, to provide broad guidelines, a broad framework, and expectations for standards that should be met, but they are delegating to schools, devolving to schools more responsibility for developing local curricula that are more responsive to and better address the needs of students locally. So I think it has to be a mix of both, in my view. It's not one or the other. There do need, I believe, this is my personal opinion, there need to be general frameworks that are developed at the national level usually, but they need to be sufficiently flexible to allow teachers and schools to respond to local needs.
I would also like to.
Yeah,
I would also like to add up on that. I think that from my experience, even for the top-down administrative structure, they could also embrace the different stakeholders for the policy making and curriculum making, even including the teachers. So I would say that in the very beginning of this curriculum making, that usually the commission would invite teachers, especially selected or distinguished teachers, into the commission, so that they would be able to provide their experiences of teaching and their experiences about the curriculum, especially the curriculum in the last 10 or 20 years. But what's more important, I think, is in the implementation phase, when the new curriculum is designed and is announced. So the next step is for the teachers to actually first to understand the curriculum, and also to do a bit of an experiment. The way we're doing is actually to have a experiment city or experiment district, so that the city would get guidance or get support from the local ministry or local department of education, so that they would do a bit of an experiment first. That's very good for the teachers to understand the new curriculum. But also, I would say another thing that teachers could do is actually to contextualize the national curriculum for their students, so that the students would be able to understand based on their own background, based on their own cultural and identity. So, yeah.
Thank you, Dr. Wang. Yeah, I have a question based on the last word that you mentioned, the cultural variation. Now we are preparing our students for a future, and for within this global era, there is like a common competences. What about the cultural related issue, and how this will impact the curriculum in the 2030? Like anyone can answer the question. It's not for specific panelist. Dr. Shanaq, it seems that you want to answer it.
I'll take my turn first, then we'll forward it to my colleagues. To be honest with you, to import already made curriculum from outside your context, it will not work. Is this statement clear for the audience? I wish it's clear. So it's not like a suit, okay? You need to have the ideas, the modules, the experiences, the best practices, understand them, analyze them, okay, interpret them, and redesign them to suit your context and culture. Without that, it will not work.
I agree with you. So standardization and modification is an important part. It's not a ready-made curriculum. Thank you for highlighting this, Dr. Shanaq. I have general question also, like any one of the panelists can answer. It's about what are the main factors that will shape curriculum for the next decade, taking in consideration the artificial intelligence, big data, all these new trends in the industry.
I'm happy to go first. I think one of the main trends over the next decade will be a movement towards more personalized learning, providing opportunities to understand what the learning needs are of individuals and to tailor teaching and learning to the needs of students. And technology will be an important part of that. but we will move away from a very standardized lockstep approach to teaching and learning, which the current curriculum encourages, really. I mean, in most countries, we develop a curriculum for all students in a particular grade. We give them the same amount of time to learn it. We expect them to learn it at a particular point in time. We grade them on their performance. So it's a very industrial model that we have, and the curriculum, the way we structure the curriculum reflects that. And I think one of the biggest changes over the next decade will be breaking out of that straitjacket and finding ways to better target teaching and learning to the needs of individuals.
Yeah, I think I would agree to a good extent there with Dr. Masters. I would think as well, as part of that, blended learning is going to become a key aspect, which will be incorporated as well, because I think during this pandemic era, we have recognized the value of technology and I suppose some of the ways in which we can incorporate distance learning. I think we've also recognized, though, the importance of face-to-face as well. So what I think will evolve over the coming years is, I'm not necessarily sure it's going to be 50-50 blended learning, but I do think there is going to be quite an element of blended learning coming in with a little more distance and a little more individualization, as Dr. Masters was suggesting there, whereby we can utilize online learning programs and delivery of information and lessons and knowledge and tasks and so on in order to adapt to each individual student and their needs, while also supplementing that quite strongly with face-to-face, whether that is through your traditional lessons, but also through other support systems in place in schools to support students on their learning journey, so that they not only develop the knowledge, skills, and abilities that they should develop, but also have an eye on their individual learning journeys and how they can incorporate what's best for them in those journeys as they progress. So yes, as I said, blended learning, I think, is going to be quite an important aspect in the coming decade.
Yeah, I agree with you. I have just a question. Yes, Dr. Qasim.
Yeah, just I want to confirm what Dr. Borek said and Dr. Masters. We agreed on the blended learning system, but we agreed to be flexible in the new learning context in this case. It should be learners centered. It should be learners' choice. The accreditation policies needs to be changed dramatically in order to help us deliver this kind of curriculum, like having blended learning by percentage, like 20, 30, 70, 30 or whatever. It will not work. It should be flexible. There is no limitation for that. It's open, and it depends on the learning outcomes, the learning context, the learner, the content, the knowledge by which they are going to interact. All of these will influence the teachers and learner decisions how to proceed on their learning journey. Not like just policies and rigid policies, what we have right now. Okay, it's allowed for online learning at the university level, like you have 33% online and 66 in pandemic, 100% it was online. So we don't know what's by 2030 what will happen. So our policies need to be flexible too in order to accommodate the delivery and development of our curriculum, future curriculum.
Thank you, Dr. Qasim, and thank you, colleagues. We have 3-4 minutes, Ms. Mahra, I think, only to finish. I have just a quick question. I think colleagues, they answered majority of the chat question. There's a question for Dr. Qasim about the universal curriculum. Are we going with the universal curriculum, or it will be
My response, quick response is yes and no. Okay, and some core subjects, some international subjects, the school, we can have universal curriculum, especially in the artificial intelligence and in the G5 generation might be, but again, the culture, the context, the learner characteristics, all of these will have significant input in our future curriculum. And one size fits all, it will not work again.
This will lead me to the last question, Dr. Qasim and colleagues. When you mentioned the inclusive approaches, individualized learning and personalized learning, we have a group of students with disability or people of determination, what we call them here in UAE. Those, I think they have also a right to be educated in inclusive setting and benefit from the curriculum. And our teachers should be really ready to deal with those issues and challenges that they are facing in their teaching and learning process.
100% agree with you completely. Inclusive, psychiatric, educational psychology, social, all different types of teachers. Inclusive should be part of our new curriculum and about our learning context in this case. I agree with you.
Thank you, colleagues, and thanks a lot to our great speaker, Dr. Qasim Al-Shunaq, Dr. Diouf Master, Dr. Wong, Dr. Barak Tursey, and many thanks for Her Excellence Mahra Al-Tawi, the Director of Regional Center for Educational Planning, and the team of the center for their great effort. I hope this also will enrich the mind of our attendees, and they will search and they will try to get some perspective about the future of their students and our generation and to benefit from such series. Thank you, and looking forward to see you in the third session of the 90 minutes knowledge series. Ms. Mahra, the floor is yours.
Thank you دكتور محمد فتيحة. شكرا دكتور محمد فتيحة. أشكر كل المشاركين اللي استمروا حتى الآن معنا بالنسبة للجلسة. أيضا حتى المسجلين أيضا أنا أبلغهم بأن أنا أبلغهم من الورقة العلمية الخاصة حول المكونات المناهج سوف تكون تشارك معهم غدا بإذن الله وبداية الأسبوع القادم مع جميع المسجلين، وتصلهم الورقة كاملة بإذن الله وتسجيل لهذه الندوة سعيا من المركز لنشر المعرفة التربوية اللي هي أساس هذه الحلقة. كذلك أيضا أتمنى أشكر المخبراء المشاركين معنا، بداية الدكتور فتيحة، دكتور قسيم اللي كان أحد أعضاء الفريق المكون والمؤلف لهذه الورقة، دكتور وانغ، دكتور تريسي، دكتور ماستر، دكتور جوف ماستر. Thank you for participating with us here and giving us more insight about this paper and how can we improve our knowledge dissemination for next time بإذن الله. Thank you everyone. Hopefully we will see you in the third session as Dr. Mohammed Fatiha from this series. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Thank you. Thanks.
Thank you all.
Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you our moderator.
Thank you.
Great job. Really appreciate that. Bye bye. برعاية الله.
Thank you, colleagues.